Hello and thank you for coming to check this out. So here is the most recent After Effects reproduction. The source graphic, as you can see, is by the motion designer, goes by the name Creathrive, and it's from the motion designer's product page over at the Envato Market. So this is the test project that I put up just for demonstration's sake a couple of days ago. And what I've done since then is improved on a few of the elements, and most importantly I've cleaned up and reorganized the project file. So that's there for you to download now. So the first point of this post today is just to let you know that this is available. And what I'd like to do is, rather than try and do a full tutorial, which would take at least 2 hours, I think, I'd just like to take you through a tour of the completed project, and we'll look at each element step by step. So more of just a project walkthrough than a full tutorial. Okay, so let's get started. I just closed up all of the groups to get us started. So the first elements are here in these groups: the introduction text and the collapser. So the collapser is what I call this big white circle that's scaling from very large to 0 over the first 14 frames. And you can see as it goes it's masking out the introduction text there. So the introduction text has an image mask applied, and the source for that image mask is the white circle. I've also got a soft focus filter on there just to try and match the tone of the animation that I was trying to reproduce. So that's the first elements there. And then the next kind of keystone feature kicks in. That's this animation here with the dots. So this element is here in this group, this dots expand and collapse. We'll have a quick look at that. So this is all done from this circle source here, and the circle, well, there's one replicator that's replicating this circle, so it's one source, one replicator. So here's the replicator, and the animation is done by keyframing 2 parameters. Important is that the origin is set to center, and there's 5 points. So the 2 parameters that are being animated is the scale end, so you can see that the dots scale up and then scale down through the animation, and that's done by animating this parameter here, scale end, and then the movement out and along and back along the x-axis is done by keyframing the start and end point here. So that's the replicator there, and then after that we get very busy. A lot of elements are at play here. So first of all, these circles that are coming out, those are all in this group here, and they are keyframed. The large one scales right off and doesn't come back, but the small and the medium one, they are going to scale up to a maximum value, then drop back and scale slightly, and then suddenly with this curve here, scale up and out of view. There's this white circle here that comes in. I call that one the pusher. Just in the context of this animation, it's like it comes out and pushes off all the other circles out of the way and off the canvas. So let's get back to where the circles begin and look at all the other elements. So there's this center feature here. Okay, that's this center circles outline here and center dot pump. So the dot pump, that's just one, that's the center circle there that's scaling up to a maximum value and then falling back to 0. And the ring that scales up with the width disappearing there, that is done in this group, center circles outline out. It's just a circle here with an image mask, and the image mask is using this element as a source. So this element's going to increase in scale to be larger than the element that it's masking. So that's what gives us the width of the circle fading out to 0 there. I find with motion that's the better way to go sometimes than by animating the width of the shape to hit 0, just because sometimes you might get, well, it's hard to get sometimes the smooth transition from a thickness to nothing, which I've tried to do here. Keyframing just the width of the shape, sometimes it will just have a thickness and then in the next frame it will disappear, so it can come across very choppy. Right, so that is those two elements done, and then we're looking now at these shooting lines either side and the confetti elements here. So the shooting lines are in here, and so how do we do this? Here is the source, and the source is just a line that has a write-on behavior set to draw and erase. So it's drawing out and erasing off over 30 frames 1 second, and I've replicated it. And for the replicator, there's a sequence replicator to move it along the X axis. So I think I started with this one here. You can see that it's going to draw on and off and move out. So then with each replicator I've just duplicated it and placed them in groups. So I'll just turn off the source here. So I did the left side group, and then I just duplicated that group, flipped them around 180 degrees on the y-axis, and that serves as this group here. So this group is just a copy of that group. So replicator is being used there to do the shooting lines. Motion blur is turned off, so they look more zippy and more speedy with motion blur turned on. So then we have the first confetti group, and again that's done with replicators. So just in order to get exactly or as close as possible to the After Effects animation, you can see I've got a host of replicators here. So unlike with emitters, you can have multiple cells for a replicator, but they're all going to occupy the same space. So I have used replicators here to get this spreading out and then the contracting back animation. Previously I've done this by using clones of emitters and setting the emitter clone to reverse. But what you get there is, especially if you have any kind of spin applied, they're going to spin out and then spin back in reverse. But by using replicators here, I'm able to have a constant spin in one direction on the way out and the way back in as well. So to get these elements to burst out and contract back in, when you look in the project file, you want to pay attention to this part of each replicator. So it's set to circle. So rather than doing a sequence replicator for just pushing them out along the x-axis, I've done each one as a circle, and it's the radius of the circle that I've keyframed there. So they're going to keyframe expand out, and then it's the radius. Each element here is on its own replicator, which is set up similar to this. And then the radius is going to pull back. So we've got spill 1 comes out first, and then spill 2 comes out. Spill 2 is going to contract back faster than spill 1. So, and then to get each side, I've duplicated and flipped them over, and just from the resource here, in this group here, Confetti Shapes, can you see all these shapes? I've just dragged in other shapes into the cells so that it's not a mirror image on either side. So there we've got replicators doing the shooting lines for us, and replicators pushing out the confetti elements and then bringing them back in. So then we hit the last stage of the graphic, so that white circle is going to scale in rapidly, and it seems to push out all of the other circles. So then we get the second bunch of confetti, more shooting lines, and this element here, if you can see, it's these circles popping in or fizzing in and out. So let's have a look at these groups. We'll start with the shooting lines, so shooting lines 2. So what I did is just pretty much identical to how we did these ones. There is the shooter source here. It's white, so we can't see it, but that source is set up the same way, draw and erase. And I've replicated that source. Here it is. I've called it replicator clone master. I've replicated that source, and then what I've done is I've just cloned that one replicator. So again, rather than animate along the x-axis, there's the source just popping into view there. Yep. Rather than animate along the x-axis, I have the replicator set to circles, so the radius. Animating along the x-axis kind of makes them shoot out at irregular angles. It looks like they're sliding across rather than shooting across, kind of like a car fishtailing. So to get them to go straight in their directions, I've made a clone of the replicator, and I've just turned each clone around to match exactly the After Effects lines as they shoot out, and you can see that each one is offset in the timeline to come out a frame or two behind the previous one. Then we have this group of this confetti here, these circles, and that is done with, here we go, the emitter confetti. So that is done just with an emitter. I posted a guide earlier on about how to do confetti emitters, so pretty much just the same setup here. They're set to fly out at a high speed, but there's a drag filter there slowing them down, so we get the speed out and coming into easing into their final positions, and they're fading out there with opacity over life set. So that's these outline circles and these filled circles here. So then there's this final element, these circles here that are coming in and out of view, and they are all in this group here, the fizzing rings. There's the big fizzes and the small fizzes, and each one is done exactly the same way that we did this element before. So there is a circle that's going to scale in, and it has an image mask, and that image mask is scaling up to be a greater size, and that's what's giving us that's what's selling the idea of the outline erasing out. So that's just a group of big ones and a group of smaller ones around the outer rim there. So then we're almost done with all the elements. So then lastly, apart from the Apple logo, that's just something I downloaded from the internet, PNG file of the Motion 5 logo. Where is it? Here we go, logo and tagline. And the logo shape, I'm just using the fill filter on there, and it has an overshoot behavior attached to scale it in and bounce it around. There is a guide here on the channel for you about overshoot. If you want to know more, I'll put a link in the description. So the overshoot behavior is scaling it in and bouncing it around, and the fill value, the fill filter here is giving it the color. That's what it looks like normally, and I've put this in the project file folder for you to download as well. So then we just have the title, the tagline text. So if you open up the groups, you'll see a few things going on with the tagline. This smaller one here, motion, I'm not exactly sure what was going on with the tagline in the Adobe After Effects graphic that we're reproducing here, but just from without knowing more, it seemed to be that this was flipping in on its x-axis. So where are we? Here we go. Here's the title element. I've linked the Y position to the big one here, so the text element Apple is coming from, what I do with the Apple, right? Apple is keyframed on the Y, so it's coming down on the Y, and on the Z, so it's coming from a position back, moving forwards to its final position. So this element here, motion, is linked to the bottom edge of Apple. So wherever the bottom edge of Apple goes, motion is going to follow. But as you can see, its motion is working on kind of a hinge, because I have the anchor point set up here, and the X rotation is keyframed I'm not exactly sure if that's what was happening in the After Effects graphic. I'm pretty sure that something similar to that was going on. So just the last part there, the text, the tagline part, I'm not really sure if that is a good reproduction of what was happening with the After Effects animation. Okay, so that's our quick tour of the project file itself. Probably not as quick as I wanted it to be, but there you go. So for beginners, get in there, and I hope this helps to make more sense of it. And for advanced users, if you've downloaded the file and if you spot obvious things that I need to improve on, things that I could have done better, please let me know. I'd love to hear about it. Okay then, well, thanks for checking this out, and I hope that this is useful for your future projects. Thanks for watching.